Everyone, this is Erin from the She.Must.Knit podcast, and today I'm going to be doing a little video about plying. Over the past month or so, I have been working on a spinning project on my wheel, and I knew right from the beginning that I wanted to add beads when I ended up doing the finished plying. So I thought today I would do a little video about it, just in case there was anyone who was curious about how I go about doing a beaded chain ply, or if you wanted to try it yourself. So before I get started on the actual plying and how to get started, I thought I would show you just a sample. I have a yarn sample here. This is a yarn that I completed either earlier this year or last year, and you can see I used some little glass donut beads, and they just add a pretty sparkle into the finished yarn. And then I also have here a finished, this is like a cowl, just so you could see how the beaded hand spun looks when it's knit up into the finished fabric. And you can see there's just these little pops of sparkle. I really like, I like doing beaded chain plies, and I also like how the yarn knits up. I think it's really pretty. So that is how it looks knit up. So let's get started. So before I begin the plying, I'm just going to go over the items and tools that I use when I do my beaded chain ply. So I have my project on the wheel here. I've just finished doing my singles, so I'm going to have to take this off the wheel, and I'm also going to have to switch the position of my band so that it's going to spin in the opposite direction. I'm also going to need a lazy Kate or something to hold my bobbin as I ply onto my wheel. So you don't need specifically a lazy Kate. I know some people they'll get a basket and put like a knitting needle through the holes. You just need something that's going to hold your bobbin in place as you ply. I also like to use a bigger plying bobbin when I do my plying. This one is from Acreworks. Most wheels, I think you can get larger plying bobbins, but this is what I like to use when I ply because I don't have to worry about running out of room on my bobbin. I also need a bowl for my beads. I need my beads, and then this is a tool that I use called the Fleegle Beader, and I'll go into a little bit more detail about this later on. For the beads, I like to use size 8 Miyuki Delicas beads. I find that these are the perfect size and shape for adding into your hand spun. You can see that they have a nice wide hole there, and they're also a cylinder shape, and they're very uniform. And they also fit very nicely on the Fleegle Beader. If you don't have one of these, if you have a small enough crochet hook that can fit through the whole side of these beads, you can use that as well, but I really like this tool. And in the box below, I will link where you can get the tool, as well as some of the places that I like to order my beads from. So I'm just going to go get my bobbin off the wheel and get all set up, and then I'll be right back. Okay, so just to show you how I've got things set up here, I now have my plying bobbin on my wheel, and I've got my leader cord, which is just some cotton yarn, going through my tension loops and through the orifice, and then I have it tied into a loop here. And then when I'm doing my plying, what I like to do is then take my singles and just tie that into the loop and into a little circle here, because we're going to be using that to get started. Basically, when you're doing chain plying, essentially what you're doing is it's almost like crocheting with your fingers. So this is going to be your starting loop. I have my single set up over here on my lazy Kate, and it's going through, the single's going through the tension loop here. I have my bowl of beads, and I've decided to go with these kind of purpley, clear, silverish ones because the fiber that I was working with is a gradient, so it's going to go from pinks and purples down to turquoises. So I thought that this would be a nice complement to that. And then I've got a number of beads set up on my Fleegle Beader already. This is one of the reasons that I really love using the Fleegle Beader versus a crochet hook, is because you can line the whole tool with beads versus if you use a crochet hook, you can really only put maybe a few beads on the tip of the crochet hook before the handle of the crochet hook gets too wide for the beads. So with the Fleegle Beader, I can completely load it up with beads, which means I have to pause fewer times to load it up more. So I am all set up, and I'm just going to get the camera set up so that I don't have to hold it, so that I can show you how I start to ply with beads. Get started. I'm all set up here. This is the loop from my leader yarn that I showed you earlier, and this is the loop that I tied on with my singles. So to get started, I'm going to reach through my singles loop, bring up some of the singles yarn, and pull it through the loop to start making my chain. And then I'm just going to wind that on a little bit, and then same thing. So I've got my loop here. I'm going to reach through, grab some of my singles, and just wind that onto the wheel. Do that again. Wind it on, and this is just the basis of the actual chain plying. I've got my loop, I'm going to grab some of the singles, and I'm just doing some of the yarn without the beads to get started first. So I'm going to do this a few times just to get going. I'm just doing it a little slower than normal, so that you can see what I'm doing. Now once I have a good start to the chain ply, I'm going to start adding my beads. So to add the beads, you're just going to do the same thing that you've been doing, except when you bring up this loop here, instead of going to grab another length of singles, you're going to grab this loop with your Fleegle Beader. So I've got my Fleegle Beader, and I'm going to grab that loop with my beader, and I'm just going to slide down the first bead. You'll see it will just kind of pop off the edge because the Fleegle Beader doesn't really have a thick tip like a crochet hook would, so the beads just slide over really easily. So now I'm going to slide that bead down, take out the Fleegle Beader, and this is going to be the new loop that I use to grab. So I'm going to go in, grab my singles, and you'll see once I start to spin, there we go. The bead is right in there amongst the 3 plies of yarn. So then I'm going to go a little more, a few more loops, until I decide I want to add in another bead. So let's add one in now. So when I grab my singles and bring it up, I'm going to just hold this loop, bring in my Fleegle Beader, grab the loop, slide one of my beads up. That's now my new loop. And continue on. So I'm going to just give that a spin, and there we go. The bead is been incorporated into the plies. Now, how often you want to add a bead is entirely up to you. I find that if I want my beads to be dispersed more often, then I might do a bead every 3 to 5 loops. If I want them to be a little more spaced out, I might do a bead every 10 loops, and of course that also depends on how big your loops are. Like if I'm just grabbing little tiny loops like this, obviously they're going to be less spaced than if I take out a big loop like that. So that's entirely up to you. But you just continue on. So I'm going to add another bead. So here's my loop. Instead of growing in and grabbing my singles, I'm just going to pop that on with the Fleegle Beader pop a bead over, grab my new loop, and off we go. And give it a spin, and there we go. That bead is now on my yarn as well. And you just keep going. So let's do one more. So I'm going to grab this loop, bring it up, bring in my beader, slide my bead, grab my new loop, and then continue on. And there is my bead. So I hope that this was helpful. If you have any questions, feel free to post below and I'd be happy to answer them. And yeah, I'm going to just keep on plying and beading away here, and I will be sure to pop in at the end of this video a picture of the finished yarn for you to see. But yeah, I hope you found this helpful. I hope you enjoyed this, and I will talk to you again soon. Bye. Just kidding, I'm back with the final yarn, and I also had a few other thoughts that I wanted to add to this video. So here is the finished hand spun. You can see the beads mixed in with the yarn. I think this color turned out really, really pretty to coordinate with the colors in this yarn. I mentioned before how this was a gradient fiber, so now you can see all the colors that were in the original fiber. So that's done. I'm very happy with it. My singles were about in the lace weight region, and my final yarn with the 3 plies together is up near the sport. So I wanted to mention that because I use a 1mm Fleegle Beader, and these come in also one size smaller than this and also one size larger, and I will link to a few places below where you can find them. But I find the 1mm works really well with the size 8 Delica beads that I use, and also my singles. I tend to default to a singles that is in this range. So this combination works really well for me. Obviously, if you were to spin thicker singles, you would maybe want a bigger size hook and also beads with larger holes. So that's just something that you need to take into consideration when you are picking out your tools. The other thing I wanted to add was I usually buy 2 vials of beads for my beaded projects when I'm doing a beaded chain ply, and you can see here I pretty much have a full tube left from this project. I placed my beads about every 6 loops, so I counted 6 loops as I plied before I added another bead. And when I measured the approximate length of the loops I was pulling, they were about 5 or 6 inches. So that that method, I was able to only use 1 vial of beads. So that should give you hopefully an idea. The beads usually go by weight. They're about 7 grams per vial, and like I said, I usually buy 2, and I don't usually need more than that. So yeah, that's the information I just wanted to add. Again, I hope this was helpful. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you so much for watching. Bye.